Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the next episode. Last time we started the conversation on tones and pitches, and we're going to continue it today. So I highly recommend making sure that you go back and reviewing the previous video to make sure that it sits well with you. So today we're going to continue the conversation of tone and pitch with scales and chords. So first off, let's talk about what is a scale. So scale is an ordered series of ascending or descending notes. The related concept to this is a key. Typically, when a piece of music is written, notes are going to be used from a particular scale. So the unordered set of tones in the scale would be known as a key, which means that if we say a song is in C major, then it's going to use the notes from the C major scale. So first, we're going to talk about major scales. I need to introduce too the concept of a whole step, which is the distance of two half steps. So we create a major scale with the following spacing: whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Or as my high school music teacher used to say, water, water, horse, water, 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 horse. So let's look at the C major scale down here. So from C to D, it's a whole step because C to C sharp is a half step. D to E is also a whole step, but E to F is a half step because there's no note between these two, remember. F to G, whole step. G to A, whole step. A to B, whole step. Again, B to C, there's no black note between these two notes, so it's only a half step. Let's go over to the A major scale to illustrate another important point of scale building. A to B is a whole step, and B to C sharp is also a whole step because to C, B to C is only a half step. C to D is a half step. So you might be wondering, couldn't we just call this D flat as well? We could, but the convention of making scales is to use every letter and not skip any letters, but we also don't want to be repeating any letters. Also, imagine how much more difficult it would be if we had D flat here, because it would also be on the same line as this next note. So let's talk about minor scales now. A minor scale is created with a different set of whole and half steps. It's whole half, whole half, whole whole. So let's take a look down here. Here's an A minor scale. We can indeed see that there is a half step between B and C and E and F, as we had discussed before. Everything else is going to be whole steps. There's another way that we could do this. Let's look at the A major scale. Remember? Well, all we have to do is take the major scale, look at notes 3, 6, and 7, and drop them down by a half step. So we could continue the scale if we kept going up to the A another octave above. Again, don't forget, notes that are an octave apart are called the same note at different registers. So I want you to notice something kind of strange here. Maybe you already see it. Isn't this just a C major scale starting on A? You wouldn't be wrong for saying that, and that introduces our next important concept called relative minors. So we said that major and minor scales are just the same thing, started in different places. And we said that specifically C major corresponds to A minor. So what's the relationship between C major and A minor? Well, A and C are a minor third apart. So that means that if you want to get the relative minor of a major scale, you start on the note a minor third below the starting note of the major scale. If you want to get the relative major of a minor scale, then you go a minor third up from the starting note of the minor scale, and you start there instead. So that means that there is another way to make a minor scale, which is to start at the relative major scale, but then we're going to go down a minor third from the start note and start there instead. So let's practice. What is the relative minor of A flat? Well, we want to go down a third, so it's going to be some kind of F. We want to go down a minor third, so it's going to be 3 half steps down. Going from A flat to G flat is 2 half steps, and then to F is another half step. So it's F. Another thing I want to talk about is key signature. We wouldn't want to, for example, in A major, where the sharps are C, F, and G sharp, we wouldn't have to write the sharp symbol next to every time we encounter that note. So that's what a key signature does. It's a permanent set of accidentals that comes between the clef and the time signature. Basically what this means here is the A major key signature. Every time we encounter a C, it's going to be C sharp. Every time we encounter F and G, they're going to be sharp as well. Of course, unless a natural sign were written next to them. So you can see really clearly what the nice thing is about key signatures, what it allows you to do. We were able to write the A major scale without having to write any accidentals right next to our note heads. The other thing that you should realize about key signature is that because major and minor keys that are relative have the same set of notes, they will have the identical key signature. So even though this is an A major key signature, it could also be the key signature of a minor key. What key would that be? Well, if you said F sharp minor, you would be correct, because F sharp is a minor third below A. Finally, one thing I want to point out on the right-hand side of the screen is that each key has its own unique set of sharps and flats. A given key will either only have sharps or only have flats. It will not have a mix of the two. Also, F major, for example, has one flat. No other key has only one flat. There are no two keys that have the same number of sharps or flats. So let's take a little detail away from scales and talk about chords. Remember how I was making a big deal out of the thirds in the last episode? Well, that's because chords are built with thirds. We're going to talk about triads today. Triads are chords with 3 unique notes, and there's 4 kinds. So let's start with major. We've got the C major chord here, for example. First thing about chords, the lowest note is called the root because that is the note after which the chord is named. And we get a major chord by having a major third and then putting a minor third on top of it. So to get from C to E is a major third, and then to get from E to G is a minor third. And between C and G, you should also notice that it is a perfect fifth. So there's always going to be some type of fifth in these 4 triads between the lowest and the highest note. Let's talk about the minor chord. Same idea, except we've taken the middle note, we've made it flat, which therefore gives us a minor third in the bottom and a major third in the top. Again, C to G, perfect fifth. So major and minor triads will always have a perfect fifth from the first to the last note. We could also stack 2 minor thirds directly on top of each other, and in this case, we bring the G down to a G flat to get a minor third on the top, and from C to G flat, indeed, it is a diminished fifth. We could also do the same thing with making 2 major thirds on top of each other. So when we have 2 major thirds on top of each other, it's A augmented. So here, C to G sharp is indeed an augmented fifth. So those are our 4 types of triads. So now I'd like to put all of this together. What kind of chords can we make with the major scale? We call these diatonic chords, or that which pertains to the major scale. So if we look at these different scale degrees on the bottom that are numbered generically with Arabic numerals, we would make chords with thirds. So we're going to always skip notes to make our chords, as you can see. So what kind of chords can we make with each of these scale degrees as the root? So the first chord, C, E, G, we talked about this. This is a major triad, and we've repeated it up here on the final part of our scale. Now what's up going here? This is D to F, which is a minor third, so it's a D minor. E to G, that's a minor third, so it's an E minor. F here, F to A is a major third, so it's an F major. G to B, major third, so it's a G major. A to C, minor third, so it's an A minor. What about this chord? B to D is a minor, D to F is also a minor. Well, when you have 2 minor thirds stacked on top of each other, you have a diminished. I want you to keep in mind that all major scales are spelled with the same formula, and the spacing is identical, so this would be true no matter which major key you are in. It's always going to be true that the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord are going to be major. The 2, the 3, and the 6 chord are going to be minor, and the 7 chord is going to be diminished. So let's look at the minor version of this. We can do the same thing. I did A minor here for simplicity. You can see that A minor, D minor, and E minor for 1, 4, and 5 are minor. 3, 6, and 7 will always be major, and 2 will always be diminished. So let's talk about this too in the context of classical music, because oftentimes they actually preferred the sound of a major 5 chord. They felt that there was a more dramatic sound from a major 5 to a minor 1 as opposed to a minor 5 to a minor 1. And they preferred that sound in their music. So that was a lot of information. Before we go, I do want to do a little bit of practice to make all of this a little bit more clear. So let's go to the whiteboard. So our task here is to write a D major scale. And I've already kind of started it for you because we know that we have to use every single letter and we can't skip letters. We're going to get something looking like this. So let's make sure that we have the right number of whole steps and half steps. So first we need a whole step. D to E is indeed a whole step. E to F is not a whole step, but we need it to be. So we're going to raise this tone to F sharp. Now we need another half step from F to G, which is already there. We need a whole step from G to A, which we have, a whole step from A to B, which we have, a whole step from B to C. Well, B to C is a half step. To make it a whole step, we're going to use A C sharp instead. And finally, we're going to do another half step, and to get from C sharp to D, where we started, is indeed another half step. So that's how we know that we did this right. Now, let's talk about making the diatonic chords. We're going to make the chords off of each scale degree by skipping every other note. So our first chord is going to look like this. This is a D major because D to F sharp is a major third and F sharp to A is a minor third. So this is just a D major chord, which we just denote with D. Our next chord will look something like this. It's going to be E, G, B, which is E minor because E to G is a minor third, G to B is a major third. For F sharp, we have a similar situation going on. This is the chord that we build off of F sharp, which is F sharp minor because F sharp to A is minor third and A to C sharp is a major third. Next, we have G, B, and D. That is a G major because G to B is a major third and B to D is a minor third. We can do the same thing for A, and we find that once again, A, C sharp, major third, C sharp to E is a minor third, so it is an A major. Next, we're going to go to B, put these notes on top of each other like so. We get B, D, and F sharp. B to D is a minor third, D to F sharp is a major third, so it is B minor. C sharp, we go from C sharp to E to G, and C sharp to E is a minor third, but so is E to G, so it is a C sharp diminished. And finally, that brings us back to D major, and you can see that our 1 chord, our 4 chord, and our 5 chord are all major like we had discussed, as well as 2, 3, and 6 being minor and 7 being diminished. Whew. Well, I know that was a lot, so take your time to digest it, and I can't wait to see you back in the next episode.